Here we go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Oliver Jimenez, President of Montebello Youth Leadership Club. On behalf of our organization, we would like to welcome everyone to our second annual Women's Empowerment Roundtable. And with that, I'll pass it over to our two moderators this evening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elena Espinoza. I am the Director of Projects for Milk, and I'm very excited to be here with you all and hear from such incredible women. I will pass it over to my co-host, Maria Jose Santana.
Hello, my name is Maria Jose Santana. I'm currently a senior at Montebello High School, and I'm the Director for Milk of Environment and Climate. And I'm so excited to hear all of your responses just because of what you do, and it's really inspiring to what you all do for this world. So.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose, for introducing yourself. Now I will begin with introductions of our guest speakers. I will kick off with Scarlett Peralta. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, hi everyone. Just want to say what an honor and pleasure to be here. My name is Scarlett Peralta. I'm a council member for the city of Montebello. And just to kind of give you a little bit background about myself and why I'm here. So at the age of 2, I immigrated to the United States from Mexico with my mom, and we left, our sense of comfort and security behind in hopes for a better and brighter future. The city of Montebello became my new home. We planted our flag here and never looked back. It's our home that saw me through many adversities as I navigated the world being an immigrant child in a single parent working class household. In 2015, I received my bachelor's from UC Santa Barbara, which made me the first in my family to graduate from a 4-year university. In 2017, I then received my master's in public policy from UC Irvine. And after graduating, I received a fellowship by the UCLA Bloom Center to intern as a research assistant in Mexico City. And there I focused and learned a lot about water resource policy. My work since has just focused on developing programs and organizing and empowering Latino families throughout Southeast Los Angeles. My work throughout SALA made me witness the levels of disenfranchisement and lack of political power in our Latino communities. I decided to pivot my skills in helping to elect progressive candidates and direct Latino voter outreach efforts by working on electoral campaigns. My journey through this landed me the opportunity to work as a regional field director for the Bernie Sanders 2020 presidential campaign. Sanders' political movement really gave me the faith in the power of organizing and mobilizing to advance progressive change in our communities. With the skills that I developed, the love for my community, and the motivation to be a catalyst for change in my city, I decided to run for local office and challenge a long-term incumbent. In November of 2020, I became the highest vote getter in the city of Montebello and the youngest female council member elected in our city. My priorities since being elected have really been focused on transparency, community engagement, strengthening our working class families, and developing stronger ties to labor. I'm extremely proud to have introduced legislation such as hero pay for frontline grocery workers in our city during the pandemic, capping third-party delivery service fees to help our local restaurants during the pandemic as well, bringing back our city's farmers market, working to introduce a community workforce agreement, and as a very proud fur mom, initiating the first city-sponsored pet fair and vaccine clinic in Montebello. So that's a little bit behind me, and so I'll let the host kick it off to the next person now.
Thank you very much, Scarlett. Next up, we have Melissa Covarrubias.
Ok, está bien si hablo español, me siento más cómoda hablando mi idioma, ¿sí? Genial. Ok, pues primero que nada les agradezco este espacio, la verdad es para mí todo un honor estar presente aquí con ustedes. Pues sí, mi nombre completo es Melissa Osteja Covarrubias, tengo 24 años de edad, recientemente egresada de la licenciatura en Derecho, soy abogada por la Universidad de mi estado. Actualmente me desempeño como activista feminista, soy defensora de los derechos humanos de las mujeres y de las niñas, colaboro con Naciones Unidas en distintos proyectos, soy aliada de las coaliciones para la acción de Naciones Unidas, también formo parte de la comunidad de práctica para la igualdad de género de ONU Mujeres. ¿Qué más? Rasgos generales, eso es a lo que me dedico, vaya, eso es un poco sobre mí. También trabajo con distintas organizaciones internacionales como Rotary International, A21, estas organizaciones me auxilian en mi labor como activista. Entonces, eso es un poco sobre mí, de lo que hago.
Gracias. Next we have is Nicole Lopez.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for inviting me to be here today. My name is Nicole Lopez, and I am a candidate for Congressional District 42. It's where I grew up. It is the district that my family has been here since the 70s. So I'm really honored to be able to run in the district. And a little bit about me. I studied sociology and women's gender studies in college, and then I worked in multitude of nonprofits. And then after that, during the pandemic, I really saw how my community was struggling, and a lot of small businesses who were owned by Black and Brown business owners were struggling, including my own family business, as well as we saw that a lot of the frontline workers were working class immigrants who weren't having proper access to protection and healthcare. So that really motivated me to run for Congress. So yeah, I'm running for Congress in my hometown, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you all for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Sarah Abdesami.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm so happy, and thank you so much, everyone, for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I definitely wished I was part of this conversation last year, but unfortunately, I was not able to make it. So thank you so much for the invite again this year. I'm so excited to hear all the wonderful women that are part of this panel speak today. I am from Canada, so I'm currently a medical student at McGill University in Montreal, but I've lived all over the country. So I've lived in provinces such as New Brunswick, I've lived in Nova Scotia, and I've also lived in Quebec and Ontario for a little while. So I know the country pretty well. And my background comes from advocacy work in inclusion and accessibility. So while I was living in New Brunswick, which is considered to be the only bilingual province in Canada, I did a lot of work to promote the accessibility to healthcare services and mental health services in both French and English. There were a lot of young people who were francophones who lived in Anglophone cities that didn't have access to the same services as the English speaking students. So that was super important for me to be able to advocate for those students and be able to make sure that they had the mental health services they needed, or even healthcare services that they needed in the language of their choice. And while I lived in Nova Scotia, I was part of the Prime Minister's Youth Council. So for those of you who don't know, the Prime Minister's Youth Council is a group of young people that started in 2016, where there's approximately 30 young individuals that get selected from all over the country, and they get to work with the Prime Minister, but also other ministers that are part of the federal government, and kind of advocate for various issues that are related to youth. So I was part of the first cohort. I was really honored to be part of the first cohort right when I was 18. I learned so much from my opportunity, and I'm happy to discuss it later on during this event. And I was able to learn so much, and I was able to do it as a young person. And even to this day, I've used that experience as a medical student, and it propulsed me into doing many other things later on in terms of advocacy work. So once again, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Jocelyn Correa.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here with all these wonderful women. My name is Jocelyn Correa. I'm 24 years old. I'm a proud first-generation student and daughter of immigrants. I graduated in 2019 from UCLA with a BA in political science with minors in global studies and Chicano studies. And currently, I'm a master in public policy student at USC. So I am a split torn between both rivalries. And I also currently serve as a delegate for the Democratic Party representing Assembly District 48. I have more than 5 years in experience with different community engagement efforts, advocacy efforts, policy research. I've done a little bit of everything, even managed a couple of campaigns and worked within nonprofits. And just what really gets me up in the morning is just the opportunity to organize and help women, help empower women. And even since undergrad, that's where really my passion for helping more women get elected in politics and get involved in civic engagement efforts, that's where that started. I got involved with Ignite at UCLA, which is part of a larger organization, Ignite National, which really is dedicated to building the pipeline of the future leaders of tomorrow and helping build or help achieve gender parity. And so ever since undergrad, that's really what I've been focused on. I stayed involved and even worked in capacities with advising and research and trying to see how we can normalize women leadership. And yeah, really my passion for social justice and public service really stems from my personal experiences as a low-income first generation and former English learner. So I'm really passionate about education policy and housing policy, but just social policy generally.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Amy Jimenez.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Jimenez, and thank you all for letting me be a part of this roundtable. I'm excited to hear all about your stories and just learn more about you all. So my background is really, I went to school out of state and was formerly a Posse Scholar, a Fulbright Scholar, and a Capital Fellow. And I only call these out because these are wonderful opportunities for people to get involved, and I'm happy to connect if anyone is interested in that. But I like to start off with saying that I'm a first generation Mexican American, first generation college student. Last year, I was formally a candidate. I ran for the city of Compton for the mayor position. And so really, aside from that, I worked in a variety of nonprofits and really was on this trajectory of becoming a teacher or a professor, and quickly realized that some of the issues that I wanted to address, I couldn't address as a classroom teacher. And rather than jumping onto these bandwagons and forming preconceived notions of what state government should be like and how it should function, I decided to then be a part of that and really learn the system and see where the gaps were. And so I ultimately then worked for the state for about a year in the executive branch. I left with more questions than answers, which, is bound to happen, but then decided that there was a missing piece to that and learned that that was the policy end of things. So I worked for a higher education nonprofit for about 4 years, focused again on policy, but also higher education, and really diversifying, really getting our marginalized communities into these spaces of higher ed. And that was a space that intrigued me because I gained so much from the educational opportunities I was able to access. And so I wanted to kind of give back to that in that space. And so I was fortunate enough to be a part of what California then changed in terms of the way the state funded community colleges, particularly, something that would take many years. And those of you that are part of policy know that that's a long process. But I was able to see that change. Ultimately, then, as a Latina and as someone that was progressing, I realized that you have to kind of advocate for yourself and you have to move in spaces. So I went to the London School of Economics to get my master's in international social and public policy. While I was out there, I was very intrigued by the workforce gap. And part of that is my own trajectory, right? Higher education and then workforce. And so I wanted to learn more about that space and bridging those gaps of underserved, underskilled, and undeveloped populations and how to tap into that. And so I wanted to get boots on the ground. And something I learned early on was this idea of scaling, right? To work at the local, national, state, and international level. And to me, that was a transitional period. However, realizing everything that was going on with the pandemic, I wanted to use my skill set and give back to my community, which is why I ran for mayor. Ultimately, that didn't flush out in the way that I would have liked, but it gave me the platform to raise awareness to a lot of the issues that other candidates were not raising awareness. And so now I fully dedicate myself to bridging the gap in particularly in the workforce to education pipeline. So that's a lot about me, actually. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Amy. And last but certainly not least, we have Lorena de la Cruz.
Hi, ladies. It's a pleasure to join all of you tonight. Thank you for having me. My name is Lorena de la Cruz. I am 24 years old, and I am a mortgage loan originator. A little bit about me is I went to Montebello High School. I then went to college at Pasadena City College. I received my associates in business and then went straight into banking. I worked at Wells Fargo for about 3 years as a personal banker, helping the community, helping families not only open accounts and obtain mortgage loans, but also guiding them in how to invest their money and how to grow their wealth and be able to have assets in their life. From there, I came into the real estate side. I left the bank, and pretty much right now I work for a broker and I help families purchase properties, refinance money out of their, equity from their home. And just overall, people in the community that need loans, that need some type of affordable payments, to have rental properties, to have, different type of businesses for their families. I like to help them not only fix their credit, but guide them into the options that they have when it comes down to, where they live and how much home they can afford. So that's what I do. And yeah, I've been doing it. I'm 24, so I've been in finance for about most of my adult life, and I enjoy it. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you very much, Lorena. Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Now I will begin with the roundtable discussions and the questions. So the first question is going to go back to Lorena. And the question for you will be, what was the moment that you realized that you wanted to step into like the whole entrepreneurship and real estate and working with brokers?
So I would say when I was like freshman in college, I knew that like there's not a lot of women in the real estate world, and if they are, not a lot of lenders. So I feel like just throughout college and then working at the bank, one time I had a lady come to my window because I started as a teller, and she came and she gave me a cashier's check with her last mortgage payment, like of her 30-year loan. And here's like this older lady, who she did tree service. So she had like her own business and, she was older. So I was like, oh my God, like this lady literally worked so hard to pay off this house that she now owns. And when she bought it 30 years ago, it might have been worth 200, 300,000. But right now, that home is worth almost $1 million. So I feel like just knowing that I'm helping somebody build something for their future is beautiful. So when I was at the bank and I was so young and I was looking at all these accounts, all these people that are self-employed, are, work for a company, have a career, and knowing the necessity of having home financing, like that's what made me more interested. And that lady, like the lady that gave me her last mortgage payment, that's when I was like, okay, like this is what I want to do. I want to help millennials. I want to help people my age, do and invest. And I currently myself, I own 2 properties. I became a homeowner at 23. And then at 24, I got my second property. So I just enjoy real estate overall, and I would love to, you know, translate that onto other young women who can also do it themselves. So yeah.
Thank you, Lorena. No, it's like it's really pretty. Like I never thought of it much as like, helping someone get that home, like a physical home, and it's very difficult for a lot of us. But thank you very much, Lorena. Next, we have a question for Amy Jimenez. And question for you: what is the moment that made you realize that you will run specifically for mayor of Compton?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And also congratulations to Lorena. That's amazing to see. And that's a piece that we're also lacking as Latinos and Hispanics in terms of generational wealth and property wealth. So I'm really happy to hear that you're in that space and helping, you know, communities in that way. In regards to the question and answer, there wasn't a singular moment or epiphany where I was like, this is it, this is when I'm running for mayor. It was a collective of experiences. As I mentioned, I learned this idea of scaling and really utilizing my skill sets. And so part of what that journey looked like was understanding why my community was in the situation that it was. That means like understanding the historical legacies of disenfranchisement, also understanding what that moment was. It was a window of opportunity. And so really that took many years of education, but also feeling prepared in myself and really prepared to kind of uplift this community and these voices in ways that reflected their voices, not in ways that I took over and kind of spoke on behalf of them, because that was never the idea, and that's never the idea. It was more about really representation. What is that? How can we convey that best? And so that's also just understanding where people are coming from, again, understanding why people had so much distrust in their local government and the significance that that local government played in the role, particularly around the pandemic, right? It affects your everyday life. And so having worked at the state level and understanding policies in that way, but now reflecting more so at the local level and seeing, well, is this actually people care about their day-to-day? And it, you know, just speaking to them and saying, you know, my trash doesn't get picked up. These neighbors are really loud, and seeing that nothing was being done at a larger scale to kind of benefit the larger community and to bring them together. Also thinking as a millennial and ahead of the larger picture. Why are we brown and Black communities? Why are we so pivot against each other? Like when the larger systemic in racism that we encounter is so much more powerful, and we can collectively come together and kind of fight back. And I really had this vision of creating a sustainable city where we basically would set the example of saying we are self-sustained, we can grow and flourish as people of color that come together. And so that was part of kind of the motivation of why and the moment I decided to run for mayor. Again, that lack of representation, but also it was, like I said, it was a combination of things, feeling completely prepared in myself, wanting to advocate and really hone that representation, understanding the issues and ways I can uplift and create these platforms and bring people together, but also the urgency that was created around this pandemic.
Thank you very much, Amy. No, I actually go to school next to Compton. I go to Cal State Dominguez Hills, and I remember seeing like a lot of like the posters and stuff like that. And when I heard that someone younger was also running, though I don't personally live in Compton, I love the idea because I would like how to see like younger faces that understand our problems as well in the whole world of politicalness. Like I was really happy to hear that you were running, but yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And also, yeah, part of that was, you know, we have these established political groups that are neither left or right. Really, they're just serving a small population in the city. And it was like, people said, you know, it takes time to build that campaign and maybe you should have done more groundwork. But honestly, I think my role in that moment was to challenge those candidates and really to say, actually, you should consider this other population. You should consider other issues like climate change. We are not just gonna stand by and watch this all unravel. These are voices that are not being heard, and these are people that have a lot to contribute. And so taking a stance in that way and kind of generating this voice was the beauty of it.
Thank you very much, Amy. Next, we have Jocelyn Correa. And the question for you is, are you content with the amount of women's representation in politics?
I really, really enjoy answering this question because I think that it takes like two parts. One, to recognize how far we've come, but also how much more we need to achieve to get to gender parity. I think especially in light of the 26 election, we experienced a surge in female candidates running across the nation, and there's been a lot of gains, especially at the local level. But I think that it's important to not be complacent and be like, oh, we made these gains, like it's good enough. I think there's always more work to be done. And of course, as women, we're always putting in the work. And I think, as you all know, we make up more than half of the population, and just the numbers across the board just don't add up in terms of parity. So to answer your question, no, I am not content with the numbers, but I do remain very hopeful because people, like a lot of the candidates and people who are running on this call, really inspire and show that they really like rise to the occasion. They're really in tune with their communities, and I think that it's really important for women to run and to continue supporting these women candidates, because women really make the difference in the issues that they prioritize. And like, for example, climate change that wasn't mentioned before, like sometimes important things like that are left out of the conversation, or gender specific issues that it really matters who is representing us. So I think that although no, I'm not happy where we're at right now, I do remain very hopeful. And I think that in light of a lot of recent events, it's prompted a lot of conversations about the importance of and the severity of underrepresentation. And I think especially it's important to not just speak about representation broadly, but I think it's important to have not only women, but women that are part of the LGBT community, people or women who identify as, who are transgender, who Black women as well, because I think a conversation I had recently, which is kind of sad and unfortunate, that sometimes, like a lot of times we see these first, like Shirley Weber that was tapped for an appointment. She used to be the state senator, and now we have gains in this aspect, but we lost a state senator, and women, or Black women in particular, are very underrepresented across the board. But even in California, that's more progressive. It's like sad that we have these, like, we win and we lose at the same time. And it's just like, we have to make sure that we continue normalizing these first, and that we continue building the pipeline for women of all underrepresented backgrounds.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn. And I like your answer that we are getting somewhere, but we're still hopeful we'll get even higher and go beyond and have more representation, not just in women, but within women themselves. So thank you very much. Next question is to Sarah. How was your experience during the time at the Prime Minister's Youth Council? I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, no, very good question. So again, I'll give a bit of a background. I was part of the Youth Council couple years ago. So in 2016, I was 18 at the time. So people who are part of this youth council need to be between the ages of 18 to 24. I'm almost 24, so it feels weird that I'm almost too old to be part of the council today. But it was honestly, looking back at it, it was a very good experience. It was fairly new. So the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, had been elected in 2015, and then just a year later had launched this council. And it's a new thing, I think, across the world, where there's a prime minister or president or a leader that puts together this council of young people. So people who aren't allowed to vote, so people between the age of 16 to 18. It's interesting to see that a lot of them couldn't even be part of politics or run for office. So it was interesting to see that we still had an opportunity to be part of a group that advises the prime minister on issues that matter to us. So we pay taxes, we are involved in the community, but we still don't have a specific vote within the election. So it was interesting to see how there was that difference between the fact that we were still being involved, but a lot of them weren't allowed to vote. So it was basically our opportunity to get our voices heard. And at the time, I was pretty involved in my community, and I was an advocate for inclusion, for accessibility, for bilingualism, for mental health. And I had just applied on a whim, not thinking that I would ever get chosen. And thankfully, I was part of the first 15. So at first, I didn't really know what to expect. I was kind of young into the whole political world. I didn't know specifically what my role was, but what I knew is that I really wanted to make the most out of it. I knew how important this was. I knew that this might have been my only chance ever to be able to get my voice heard and to be able to represent my community. So I really made sure that the work that I was doing, I was giving it my 100%. And I learned so much from it. I got to work with so many incredible people from across the country, even across the world. I mean, that's how I got connected with the Montebello Youth Leadership Club. And I got connected to many other people from across other countries, young leaders that are doing amazing work in their communities. And I got inspired by them. And I got to work with so many of them, even like in Canada. I got to work with young people in Canada from across different provinces, and I got to meet so many different politicians and ministers, and got to work on so many different issues that are so important. I remember the first meetings that we had, one of the biggest topics was mental health. So I was super, super excited to be able to share that perspective, especially coming from a smaller province where we don't have many of those services available to young people. So just having that chance to be able to talk directly to the prime minister, even after I was done my mandate, I still got a chance to meet with him again and to discuss important topics and important issues with various ministers. And even to this day, even though I am considered to be an alumna, I still have a chance to be connected with various politicians and be sure that our voice is heard. Because I think, you know, even though we might be young, we might seem to be inexperienced, but I do think that we have so much to say, especially as women, a woman of color, women that are part of various different minorities. I think we still have so much to contribute. And honestly, it was a super great experience. And I would definitely, if there are any Canadians that are listening to this or that are part of this conversation right now, I would definitely recommend applying. And if there's anything that you want, if you have any questions that need to be answered, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm always happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Sarah. No, I was hearing a podcast and I heard you speak, and I was like, it sounds very scary because it's like a serious thing and you're giving your input, but I was just like, power to her. Like, you were speaking both in English and French, and I was like, no, I'm too intimidated to do that, but power to you for being able to do that.
Thank you so much. I'm working on my Spanish, so maybe one day I'll be able to speak all three languages.
Please do, please do.
Okay. I will.
Next person we have is Nicole Lopez. And our question for you is, as a young candidate running in an older age-dominated area, have you ever found yourself falling into imposter syndrome? And how have you been able to work with it?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome really doesn't ever go away. I think, especially as a first generation college student, I had imposter syndrome as someone who was like the first in my family to go into the type of work that I'm doing. I had imposter syndrome. So it kind of always just lingers a little bit. But it definitely, you get better at it every single time you kind of push yourself. But when it comes to running in this campaign and in this race, yeah, it is a little intimidating to be the youngest candidate right now in the race. And, if I end up getting elected, I would be one of the youngest people ever elected to Congress. So that adds another layer to kind of the imposter syndrome and the just the fear of like not feeling prepared enough. But something that I kind of remind myself daily, especially when people will, try to like put you in your place and tell you, especially as a young woman of color, and tell you like you're not ready, you shouldn't run, this is like not for you, you're not experienced enough. I just remind myself that my life has been preparing me for this moment. The reason I'm running is because I haven't seen people like me and my family members and my community members represented in halls of power like Congress. And I don't feel like our elected officials are really reflecting the experiences of my community. So like who better to represent the community that I come from than me who comes from that community. So that's kind of what I tell myself, like, I could have all these fancy degrees and I could have all these like years of experience, but really what comes down to me being qualified to run for office, especially for this seat in the district that I'm running in, is the fact that I grew up here and that it's my home. And so this race is really personal to me, and it's not just a power grab or something to advance my career. I'm actually a big proponent of term limits. So I really do think that like, we have elected officials who were in Congress for 27 years, which is how old I am. The incumbent who decided to retire this year, she had actually been in Congress since I was born. So I really think that it's time that we have younger elected officials who really understand what folks are experiencing on the ground, have that experience working in the community, and bring that to Congress so we can pass laws that actually reflect the experiences of young people and their communities. So yeah, like imposter syndrome, unfortunately, will always be there, but you have to remind yourself that you are more than qualified. And especially for young women, young women don't apply for a job unless they're 100% qualified, whereas men, I believe it's like 60%, 70% are qualified for a position. So, don't be your worst critic. Don't be the one that stops you from pursuing something. I've had to push back at a lot of criticism and folks telling me that I'm too young to be running for this position. And you just got to remind yourself that, every experience you've had, whether it's been big or small, has been preparing you for whatever you want to do in your life. So that is something that I really hold on to as I'm like running this race. And I really encourage like other young women, especially young Latinas in LA, which is where I'm running in, to just like take a chance. Like we're not taught and we're not encouraged to take risks. And that really comes from the fact that a lot of us have immigrant parents who like weren't afforded that opportunity to take risks. And it's up to us to now carry that and make sure that we are not limiting ourselves. So yeah, I would just encourage young women to really like, even if that little imposter syndrome voice is talking to you, talk back to it and let it know that you're ready for whatever it is that you're facing.
Thank you very much, Nicole. No, like I was saying to Amy, I'm really glad to see that there's more young people wanting to step into the world of politics, because for a long time it was just older white men on that, and we're tired of it. And I'm glad to see that there's more and more young people, young women, Latinos, like minority groups going for it. So I'm very proud to see that you were running. And next we have, la próxima pregunta es para Melissa. ¿Qué fue lo que te motivó para empezar tu activismo en el feminismo?
Ok, primero quiero hacer un comentario. Les agradezco mucho que me hagan las preguntas en español. El hecho de que estemos hablando el español y también el inglés, o sea, estamos incluyendo, y eso pues realmente lo necesitamos en la sociedad. Muchas gracias. Lo que a mí me motivó inicialmente creo que fue el momento en el que yo hice consciente los tipos de violencia, ¿no? Que sufrimos las mujeres. Entonces, en el momento en el que yo me di cuenta de que no debería de ser así, de que las mujeres no deberíamos de enfrentarnos a la desigualdad o no es justo simplemente el no contar con las mismas oportunidades que los hombres cuentan. Entonces, cuando hice conciencia sobre eso, dije, ok, voy a hacer algo, o sea, tengo que hacer algo. Entonces, conocí el feminismo y dije, no estoy sola. Entonces uní mi voz a la de mis demás compañeras y así, eso fue lo que me motivó. O sea, todas estas violencias, todos esos patrones de conducta que violentan a todas las mujeres y no solamente a nosotros, porque recordamos que la violencia contra las mujeres y niñas afecta a todos los sectores de la sociedad. Por algo empezamos y eso fue lo que a mí me motivó inicialmente a unirme al activismo feminista.
Gracias mucho. No, yo también he visto mucho de eso, que no solamente hemos vivido ya durante todo esto y mirando cómo nos tratan a las mujeres, y no mujeres solamente por nacidas, mujeres que se hacen la transición de llegar a mujeres. Y es triste, pero deberemos hablar sobre esto y dar más audiencia a la gente para mirar que hay gente que esto no está bien, no debe de ser bien, algo no debe de ser normalizado y darle luz a eso. Pero gracias.
Por supuesto. Sí.
Next question goes to Scarlett. What motivated you to run for public office? And good job, you have that little blue check mark I saw. Props to you.
Thank you. I think, just want to just say how humbled I am to be in the presence of such like powerful and beautiful and strong women. Just hearing you guys all speak just, really gives me shivers and just, I needed to say that. But for what motivated me personally to run for public office, I think it's my lived experience growing up as an undocumented immigrant. Running for office was really the last thing that I thought I could ever do. It wasn't in the picture for me. Growing up, I was afraid to organize, to join and support protests or rallies for the fear of getting arrested and deported. My mom would say, "Mija, no vayas, por favor, cuídate." I openly felt that the need to suppress the fire in me was to really just protect myself and my family. I received my US citizenship in my early 20s, and let me tell you how transformative that was for me. I was no longer afraid to make noise. I was no longer afraid to be unapologetically active and advocating for my community. The power of voting for the first time after receiving my citizenship, voting for my undocumented family and community made me realize the privilege and power that we each hold in changing our political systems to better serve those that have been disenfranchised. People have power and we need to reclaim that. I am of the belief that you need to tell a woman 10 times to run for office until she takes it seriously and realizes her potential. Similarly to what was said earlier, a woman needs to know 100% that she is qualified or else she won't apply. And I was one of them. I won't lie. It took me a really long while to believe in myself. But in the midst of the chaos and the hurt that we were experiencing during the core of the pandemic, and the shockwaves that were really being felt in our local community, families losing their jobs, not able to pay their rent, put food on the table, and just really staying afloat as their loved ones were passing away made me realize that I had no time to self-doubt myself, that I had to put that away, and that stepping up for my community was really the most powerful way that I could help. Let's not forget, the fastest change you can see happen is at the local level. It's the less glamorous side of politics, but you can really make profound difference. And I think we really have, as far as the work that we've been able to get through currently in Montebello. And it's really important to remember that movements start in your area and that they start with you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Scarlett. And I'm gonna remember that starts with you. It's gotta start. You gotta put the first foot outwards in order to get somewhere, in order to do something. So thank you. Now I'm gonna pass it over to Maria Jose, who's gonna ask the last round of questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Helena. I will continue the roundtable discussion. And the first question goes to Councilmember Peralta, and your question is, being one of the youngest council members, what advice would you give to young women who want to follow your footsteps?
Yeah, so, for me, kind of how I talked about a little bit earlier, just my lived experiences, and the adversities that not only myself, but that we all face. For me, it was important to remember the people that were with me along the way and how life really just introduced me to amazing mentors and allies and just genuine friends who empowered me to find my voice and really shatter the glass ceilings that were around me. So, one of my pieces of advice is to really, make sure that you find your inner circle of friends and family who believe in you, who will be there for you through your happy days and your toughest of days when you want to quit. Your inner circle will really carry you to the finish line when you're too tired to canvas, too scared to give it your all, too doubtful to think that you can succeed. Your team will be your saving grace. And always remember, why are you doing this? Why are you running for office? And really let that ground you. I ran to represent a community that raised me. I ran to be a catalyst for change for the many families that had a similar background as me, who I didn't see being reflected on the dais, for renters who aspire to own a home in our community one day, for hardworking immigrants who need the support to be able to invest and open their own businesses in our city, for parents who desire safer spaces for their children. Every time I questioned or doubted my trajectory, thinking of them, my community, those who were really supporting me through this really just grounded me every day to keep going. And as women and as young women seeking to serve, we do have a very unique experience, and the ways that we're perceived and underestimated. Don't ever allow anyone to make you feel inferior. To the women who are often told that you're too young, that you're inexperienced, to wait your turn, you chase your dream and don't let anyone stop you. You knock the most doors, you make the most calls, you leave it all out on the field and don't leave one rock unturned. You have the power to win. You're experienced enough to do this. You're knowledgeable enough to do this. You're mature enough to do this, and you're brave enough to do this. And so that is my advice for anyone watching and all the young women that, I hope will rise to the occasion and run for office in the near future.
Yes, I totally agree with your response, especially having your support from your family and being assertive within the political world. So I think that's great advice, especially for young women. So thank you. La siguiente pregunta es para Melissa. Y tu pregunta es, en muchos lugares el feminismo es percibido desfavorable. ¿Qué les dirías a la gente que mira el feminismo así?
Les diría muchas cosas, honestamente, pero digamos ya siendo más diplomáticos, vaya, mira, para empezar, las personas que critican el movimiento lo hacen desde el desconocimiento. Piensan que a lo mejor es algo nuevo, ¿no? A lo mejor no saben que incluso el hablar ahorita, el estar hablando, el tomar puestos de poder es un privilegio y nos costó muchos años de lucha y nos costó la vida de muchas mujeres. Entonces, yo primero le diría que no hablemos desde el desconocimiento y que si no vamos a aportar nada al movimiento, a una lucha social, pues guardarnos los comentarios. Creo que también las personas que critican o no saben del movimiento lo hacen desde el privilegio también, ¿no? El hecho de que tal vez yo no conozca o no sé, a lo mejor alguien en mi familia no ha sido violentada, ¿no? Ojalá. Pero eso no quiere decir que no exista la violencia contra mujeres y niños, no quiere decir que allá afuera no estén matando a tantas niñas, ¿no? Y, o sea, es que hablar de la violencia contra mujeres y niñas, hablar del feminicidio, es una problemática global, mundial. Estamos hablando de una crisis mundial porque está tan normalizado y está tan generalizado. Es un problema de derechos humanos, ¿no? Que nos compete a todos. Entonces, para mí es normal encontrarme a este tipo de personas, ¿no? Al principio sí me molestaba, ¿no? Como feminista, y antes decía, soy feminista radical, ahorita no. la respeto, no soy feminista radical, pero ahorita ya lo dejo pasar y ya, si quieres tener una linda charla conmigo, discutirlo, lo hablamos como gente madura. Si vas a atacar al movimiento, paso. Esa es mi respuesta.
Sí, como feminista es increíble ver a mujeres como usted haciendo un gran cambio para las mujeres, especialmente las latinas y las mujeres como yo en Montebello, y es es muy gran que estás haciendo para las latinas. Sí,
Muchas
gracias.
gracias, muchas gracias.
The next question will go to Nicole, and your question is, what is your proudest or happiest moment while running as a candidate for Congress?
Well, there's a lot. But I think one that kind of took me by surprise, I was like at a local business just talking to someone about my campaign. And this gentleman happens to be a Republican, and he was a Trump supporter, and he was very, let's say, aggressive with his beliefs about women running for office and Latinas. And he was also a Latino, but it was just not going well. And I was really holding my own and being very polite, but also standing my ground in my platform, my beliefs. And so we were going back and forth and talking about politics and stuff. And I remember feeling a little like deflated in that moment, because I was like, wow, like this is really hard. Like it's really hard to like push back against people who don't think that you can do this. He actually thought I was running for student council at the local high school. And then I had to explain to him that I was actually running for US Congress. But besides that, so we're going back and forth, and then, the conversation kind of ended. And I was about to leave the shop, and this young woman, she was a mom, and she approached me, and she was like, she's like, I've never voted before, but I'm going to vote for you. And she said, I want my daughter to see someone who looks like her be in office. And she's like, and I was really impressed with how you stood your ground in that conversation. And she's like, and I would be so happy to see someone who looks like my daughter and hopefully inspires her to run for office. So even in that moment where I felt very deflated and kind of like, to be honest, like upset, because I was like, this is like really difficult. I was like, you just don't know who's watching. I didn't even know that lady was overhearing our conversation. I didn't even know that she was listening to us. And so to have her say that, just watching that interaction, even when I didn't feel the most confident, inspired her to eventually vote for me. And also how much that would mean to her daughter really moved me a lot, and reminded me in that moment where I was like, okay, this is why I'm running for office. Like I'm running so the next person who looks like me, the next Latina who looks like me, who has my background, feels inspired and feels like they can do this too. So yeah, I think that's been the most moving part, is just seeing, especially young women in LA, young Latinas who like come up to me and like talk to me about, they're like, I've never been involved in politics before, but I really want to get involved in this campaign. Like that just motivates me every single day, because the campaign life is very exhausting, as Amy and Scarlett will tell you. It is, and like Scarlett said, sometimes you're like, why am I doing this? Like, this is really hard. But having those moments of support and having your own support system, like really keep me going. But yeah, just speaking to that woman and hearing about her daughter and realizing like, oh, wow, that young girl is going to have something I didn't have when I was growing up. They're going to have someone that looks like them who's pursuing something like this. So that's been really just like, I can't even put into words how inspirational that's been.
No, it's truly empowering to see women, especially Latinas. And I think that's the whole goal, is to inspire, especially the younger generation, to follow your footsteps. And it's really inspiring to see you inspiring others. And that's amazing. Thank you. The next question goes to Sarah. And your question is, since you are a medical student, what motivated you to take that route? and what continues to motivate you along your journey?
Yeah, good question again. So I just started medical school. I am in my first year. I started during the pandemic, so it's been a lot of Zoom lectures and Zoom classes, but it's been an incredible experience. So I think Amy said this when she was talking about the reason why she was running, but it wasn't a one moment that made me want to go into medical school. It was a collection of many different experiences throughout my life that made me realize that medicine was probably the career for me. So I first was exposed to the healthcare world when I was very young, so around 7 years old. And it was during that time where my mom had a few complications with her pregnancy. So she was at the hospital for a very long time. And that's where I saw what doctors did and nurses did. I was at the neonatal intensive care unit for a few times when I was a kid, and I could see the doctors and the nurses working tirelessly in order to help my sister and my mom during those times of need. And I remember telling my dad that this was what I wanted to do. This was something that I really wanted to keep doing. It was be able to help those kids later on and be able to make them feel better. So at 7 years old, I would say that that's where I first got exposed to it. But it wasn't until high school, I would say, where I started taking bio classes and, you know, get more exposed to the world of science, where I really thought maybe this was the right field for me. In terms of careers, I really wanted to be in a field where I could work with people directly, where I could learn constantly and be more hands-on. That was really what I wanted to do. And later on, I realized that healthcare in general was something that really interested me, and just be able to be with people all the time. That was the biggest reason why I wanted to do it. And I did a bachelor's degree in medical sciences, and that also strengthened my interest. I was volunteering and working with kids with disabilities during that time. So that kind of pushed me towards maybe working with kids with disabilities later on as a physician, and it's still something today that I'm interested in doing. And now that I'm in medical school, like it's definitely a humbling experience, especially during the pandemic, because you get to see directly the impact that doctors and nurses and, you know, like everyone during this pandemic have been doing. And it was clear to me to see that we are lacking doctors. I mean, I know it's the same in the US, but Canada has been impacted by the pandemic tremendously, where we had a lot of doctors burn out. We had a lot of students also burn out because of the toll and because of the immense work that needed to be done. And when I was applying, it was during the pandemic, and they increased the number of seats across medical schools here in Canada because they realized they needed more students. So I really wanted to contribute to that, honestly, because I really wanted to be part of that work and be able to help others in that way. And that's the reason why I wanted to apply to medical school. So from a woman's perspective, I actually am the first one in my entire family to become a physician. So in a couple of years, once I graduate, I'll be the first one in my community actually to be a physician. So I never got exposed to doctors in my time. And it was a difficult process to go through, especially because I knew nothing about it. I didn't know how it worked. My dad was the first one to go to university. So I got supported by him through that, you know, through the process of applying to university. But in terms of becoming a physician, I had no idea what it took or what it would take later on. So it's incredible because it actually puts you at an advantage. If you have people in your family that are physician, they can help you tremendously. And I had to figure out that process on my own. And even like growing up in smaller communities, I never saw any doctors that looked like me. The only time I saw someone in a hospital that looked like me, she was a receptionist, and I got so happy about it. So I really hope that later on, as I become a physician, I can be that person for those young girls and show them that it can be done, and you can be the first one in your family to become a physician, and that you're gonna have to work harder, but you can do it. So yeah, that's it to answer the question.
Yeah, I give you all the credit in the world, because I've seen some of my family members going into the medical world, and sometimes my family member didn't finish, but I know it's a very hard road to go through, and it's a it's a long journey, but it's truly incredible as a young medical student. It's amazing what you're doing. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
The next question goes to Jocelyn, and your question is, as a young woman in politics, where do you see the future of women in politics in the next 10 years?
So in the next 10 years, I envision a world where the momentum that we have today just continues, and we just see women getting elected to such a large scale that it becomes so common that it just becomes normalized. Like, it's exciting to see a lot of first that were first women in different positions. Like, I believe Scarlett said she was the first Latina to be elected to her city council. And by 10 years, I hope that there were, I don't know, an exaggeration, but like 10 women in that position where it's just like the younger generations are able to envision themselves in those spaces just because it became so normalized to have women in these leadership positions. And I think that a lot of that stems from like where we are now and how we can get there. It's just right now, it's just you don't know what you don't know. And it's not just, a lot of people think elected officials or these positions of impact, they think, say like federal government, and there's a disconnect. Like if you need to start local and a lot of times to get there, and there's a lot of positions that a lot of people don't know about. That a lot of people can start. There's some cities have neighborhood councils, there's boards, there's commissions, there's so many places that one can start. But if you don't know, then how are you going to seek out those positions? And I think it's partly that, but also being able to envision yourself in those spaces and being able to see people that look like you. And hopefully by 10 years, like I said, it becomes so normalized that it just becomes, it becomes the norm. And then also, I think another thing that isn't as commonly discussed, in addition to like women in elected positions, I also recognize like the need for diversity in like elected official staff. And also something that I realized personally, I got the opportunity to work in Sacramento for some time at the Department of Ed, and it's a little bit different from normal like elected officials, but I was seeing generally that there's not a lot of women who are data analysts, and a lot of those people are informing the narrative of our communities. So I think it's important to think creatively how to get women across the board in these positions of impact and power, because if we're not at the table, then we're getting decisions made for us. So by 10 years, hopefully we have women, we get the gender parity and representation that we deserve.
Yes, I totally agree that we need a lot more women in this higher power. And I believe one of the other questions, I believe for Nicole, was that within this older male-dominated world that we really do need women within the political world. So I completely agree with you. And like I said to all the other speakers, thank you for everything that you do. The next question goes to Amy, and your question is, what motivates you to continue doing the work you do in the city of Compton?
Thank you for your question. So it's a variety of things, but I think ultimately it's understanding impact and influence, right? I was doing the work before I ran, and through my campaign, I learned it was an opportunity to learn more about the issue areas, to understand my community better, and to gain clarity really in the spaces that I can use my skill set, that I can follow and pursue those passions in terms of education and working with young people and kind of connecting the dots, right? So part of what I encountered a lot during the campaign was we want someone local and native to Compton. Now there's different ideas of what that looks like, but then ultimately what you're left with are candidates that you're not completely satisfied as a community in a holistic manner, right? And there's an array of issues, and there's an array of separations and degrees of separations. But what was very evident was that there is a leadership pathway vacancy. Now, if we say that as a community, we want someone that represents us fully and someone that is from our community, whatever that may be, then we have to provide these leadership pathways. We have to create these opportunities for young people to develop the leadership skill sets that we're looking for in candidates. And so that ultimately is what drives me, and in terms of, I want to get to a point where I work with the current mayor that was elected, and I am working with her to say, how do we make this happen? And it's very possible. And, again, the idea of impact and influence, you don't have to be an elected official to create that impact. It's all about taking initiative. It's understanding the space and working and seeing how you can use your skill sets. You can do that through volunteering. You can do that by creating clubs at school. And just gaining these skill sets and so forth. So part of that larger issue was untapping the potential of Compton natives or of the local community. It's also making Compton more accessible, more livable, somewhere, a place we can all call home. And it's a place that we all, that reflects us all. And so knowing the audience today, what I want to say is, I care about these issues and I care about that specific youth development because my trajectory is the culmination of these community efforts. I am who I am and where I am today because throughout my journey, I met people who believed in me, who guided me, and who most importantly empowered me to participate, to explore, and to lead in many ways, right? I found my voice and my call to action. And now that looks different, and it will continue to look very differently, but ultimately my call to action is to help advocate on behalf of people and to help uplift marginalized communities. So my advice to everyone watching is to, get involved, ask questions, seek out opportunities. I like how there was a couple examples of I just submitted my application. I didn't think I was going to get it, but I got it. And this was the great experience that prompted me to then, go into medical school and learn more about government and so forth. And, ultimately experience without the fear of failure, learn, grow, trust your creativity, your resiliency, and your ability to problem solve, because where we grow up in and the spaces that we do and the adversities that we encounter make us who we are and make us ready. So.
Yeah, I agree. And what you said about having especially the young people to learn these skill sets, because us, the young people, we're the future. So I think that is the biggest problem, getting the younger generation involved with politics. And I love that you're working with the mayor of Compton, because you still want those goals that you set for yourself when you wanted to become mayor, even though you didn't get the position. But it's incredible for you, for me to see that you're still trying to achieve those goals and really trying to do better for the community. So thank you.
No problem. And I also want to add that the United States and the demographic as a whole, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the majority of women in the States are going to be Latinas. So we will be the majority, and whether they want us in these spaces, it's bound to happen, right? And so let's claim that and let's take ownership of that.
Yes, I agree, and hopefully we can see that, and we're hoping. And last but not least, the last question goes to Lorena, and your question is, as a young entrepreneur, how do you make sure your voice is heard? And how can we as young women build our confidence to follow our dreams and passions in life?
So I feel like you have to really know what you want and go after it. Being so young and being in an industry where it's mostly, older men or older women, you have to learn to believe in yourself. And even though we're young and we're Latinas and, we come from a minority, just having confidence, knowing that even if I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer. I will ask who I need to ask. I will go that extra mile for my clients, for this family that I'm helping. So I feel like just believing in who I am and what I'm here for. I'm here to provide a service. I'm here to help you and just help the community, because we all work so hard, and you know, the market, the way it is, how rents have increased drastically from Compton to San Bernardino to East LA, everywhere. You know, it's such a big impact in the community, how just overall real estate is so important. And I feel like just believing in myself and what I do and why I do it. You know, I do it because I want to help that single mom be able to provide housing for her family. I do it because I want to help this, you know, older couple be able to retire with something that they can afford. So I feel like I just love the challenge of being where I am, and I believe in myself every single day, making the phone calls, making the pre-approvals. You know, it's all what you give, and that's what motivates me every day, knowing that I'm helping the community and knowing that I'm growing as a person and I'm helping them grow as well. So that's what motivates me.
No, yes, I like the advice that you gave, that if you don't know the answer, you're gonna find the answer, because you set goals for yourself because you want to achieve them. And I think when you said that you like the challenge, when we accomplish a goal, we like to look back and say, it was a very hard journey, but the challenge was part of the fun. And then I think without the challenge, it would be boring, right? So I think that's a very important part of, I think, life, because, you know, without challenges, that everything would just be so easy and there wasn't any effort, not effort, but you know, so.
Yeah, and think about it, you know, we have families who are ITIN, like they're not a resident, they're not a citizen. So how am I gonna help that family be able to accomplish home ownership? I have to know the programs. I have to know the bank programs that are good for them. So I just love being able to make it happen and giving them their options and just overall making an impact.
Yes, thank you. And I'd just like to say thank you for all of your responses. They were wonderful.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose. So now we're coming to an end, and I wanted to open up the, I would say floor, but we don't have a floor here. I would like to open up for people to say their last words. So vamos a empezar con Melissa.
Bien, como comentarios finales y desde mi línea de investigación, que es el feminicidio y la violencia contra las mujeres, nos hemos dado cuenta que uno de los pilares fundamentales para poder erradicar la violencia contra las mujeres y niñas es precisamente el empoderamiento femenino, que es lo que estamos haciendo ahorita y que es de lo que estamos hablando. Si queremos erradicar la violencia contra las mujeres y niñas, necesitamos empoderar a nuestras niñas, necesitamos alzar la voz, luchar por puestos de liderazgo, luchar por más posiciones visibles y públicas para las mujeres. No sé, al menos aquí en México no es muy común ver a una mujer presidenta o ver a una mujer que es directora de tal institución. Tenemos que luchar por más espacios, tenemos que seguir luchando para hacer escuchar nuestra voz, que es sumamente importante. También aparte del empoderamiento femenino, es muy importante visibilizar también, ¿no? Todas las violencias, los tipos y modalidades de violencia. Puedo durar toda la noche hablando de este tema, pero bueno, es muy importantísimo de verdad que visibilicemos y que nos demos cuenta, ¿no? También empezamos por una misma, o sea, yo, Melissa, como mujer, estoy siendo violentada. Y profundicemos en el tema, o sea, al hablar de violencia no nada más estamos hablando de lesiones físicas o emocional, no, sino estamos hablando de que es un problema de la cultura, que normalizamos, que generalizamos y sin darnos cuenta la seguimos reproduciendo. Entonces, por medio del conocimiento podemos atacar esta problemática global. También, ya como último comentario, a manera de resumen, la violencia contra las mujeres y niñas tiene efectos de alcance global. No solamente afecta a las mujeres y niñas, sino nos afecta a todos los sectores de la sociedad sin distinciones. El machismo, por ejemplo, afecta también a los hombres. Los afecta. Un ejemplo de ello, ¿no? Los hombres no deben de llorar o no deben de mostrar emociones, ¿no? Y, o sea, somos seres humanos y también sentimos, ¿no? Entonces, todos estos efectos de la violencia nos afectan a todos. Entonces, si es un problema global que nos afecta a todos, entonces todos también debemos de formar parte de la discusión y debemos de poner de nuestra parte precisamente para erradicar este tipo de violencia. Gracias.
Gracias mucho, Melissa. Next we have is Nicole.
I just want to thank you all so much for having me here, and it's been an honor to be a part of this roundtable with such incredible women who are doing incredible work. And I guess just like for my own closing remarks, I want to also just say that I'm here. If anyone has any questions about running for office, please feel free to DM me. I'm constantly checking my social media and would love to give you any support or advice about running for office. It's not easy being a young woman, especially a young woman of color, running for any kind of elected office. Like I said, we weren't raised or taught that these positions were for us. So we kind of have to figure it out as we go. But I'm inspired by women like Scarlett and Amy who have reached out and, you know, encouraged me. But I also want to be that source for other people. So, and yeah, I really hope, like Jocelyn said, that it becomes so normal that women are running for office and getting elected that we don't have any more first, and that, you know, just more women and women of color especially feel like this can be them, and this role and this position was made for them, and that they're more than qualified just based on their life experiences to run for office. But I'm just really thankful for this space that you all provided for us. And I'm excited to see what you all accomplish and do. And I'm really proud of each and every one of you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Next we have is Sarah.
Once again, I would also like to thank everyone for everything that you had to say. I'm sitting here being inspired all over again by all the incredible work that you do in your community. So thank you so much. I'm definitely honored to be part of this panel discussion. As closing remarks, I would say maybe the biggest pattern I've seen tonight is that there has been a lot of firsts among ourselves. There has been a lot of challenges that we had to go through as women, but also as women of color, as first generation immigrants as well. So I'd just like to say to whoever is watching, if that's the case for you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I mean, we're always happy to help out others. Other people have helped us. So definitely this was not something that we did on our own. We definitely had many people behind us, women, men who have constantly supported us through our work. So I personally, to get to where I am, and I know to get to where I want to be, I cannot say that I did that on my own. I definitely had the support from my family, the support from friends, the support from even strangers, which is interesting to say. And just know that you never know who's watching. Again, you might be the inspiration to someone else who also wants to become the next mayor, who also wants to become maybe president even of the United States. Hopefully we will get there someday, and hopefully we will see that happen in our lifetime. And maybe it'll be one of you guys. So I'm clearly really hopeful to see that happen. One other thing is that don't be afraid to challenge yourself. I think if you are in your comfort zone, you might not be in the right zone for you. So don't be afraid to take that leap of faith and really try on for that position, or try on for that, for that opportunity that you think that you would never get. I think many of us can say that we never expected this to happen. And we're all very, very grateful that we took that chance and we were able to apply or to take on that challenge, because it really helped us even more. And those experiences are some of the best experiences we've ever had. So once again, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. If there's anything that I can do later on, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm always happy to help out.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I just wanted to make a quick comment. My sister's name is also Sarah, but I'm very proud to know that there's another Sarah like you out there. So thank you. Next we have is Scarlett.
Yes, before I do my closing remarks, I just did want to acknowledge something that, Nicole said that just got really ingrained in my mind as far as we were raised to believe that these positions aren't for us. And I cannot say how truthful that is. I think we all, through what we are experiencing within the different worlds that we're in, and how we are challenging these systems, we are challenging these institutions to make a space for ourselves. And I think every single one of us in this space right now is proving that wrong. So I just wanted to comment on that because it did speak to me. But I just want to genuinely thank, the Montebello Youth Leadership Club for organizing this empowerment roundtable, to Oliver, Christopher, Maria Jose, Elena, and the rest of the board for just the incredible work that you're doing in our community and the many ways that you're empowering young women, youth in our community and outside of Montebello. I mean, to have someone from Canada on here today is just, what a privilege. That is really awesome. And so I also want to thank, Melissa Covarrubia, Sarah Abdesami, Amy Jimenez, Lorena de la Cruz, Nicole Lopez, Jocelyn Correa, each and every one of you for really sharing your stories, for being brave in your ventures, for uplifting other women in your space. It's just been such an honor to really be here with you all. And for those watching at home, please chase your dreams. Don't let anyone tell you you're not enough or to wait your turn. This is your time. Own your narrative and own your space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Lorena.
Hi, well, thank you all again for having me. It was a pleasure meeting all of you. Mucho gusto conocerlas a todas. Melissa Covarrubias, me encantó tu acento y tu historia. La verdad que me encanta que haya mujeres poderosas y que no tienen miedo a defender lo que creen. Mi respeto para ti. Thank you all, and let me know if you guys, have any questions, and if you guys would want to ever, ask me or maybe look into potentially buying any real estate. I can always help all of you.
Thank you. Next we have is Amy.
Yeah, so I just want to echo all the remarks and thank you all for putting this roundtable together. It was a pleasure sharing the floor or the space with you all wonderful ladies. And all I'll leave you with is don't give up, don't give in, and always be a force to be reckoned with. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, Jocelyn.
I also want to thank you all for sharing your wonderful stories and for just a wonderful conversation. I'm leaving really empowered, and thank you for everyone who put this event together and made it happen. And I guess to piggyback off what Scarlett mentioned about believing in yourself, and I think oftentimes I've heard myself like, wait your turn. And I think if not you, then who? And I think oftentimes, like someone mentioned, or a lot of people mentioned on this conversation, was that we're often have to be asked 10 times, and the imposter syndrome is real. But I think we need to remember the power of our testimonies, the power of our lived experiences. And that is so powerful that even when we think about being ready for running for office, for instance, we think, oh, I don't have this. You start listing all the things that you don't have, and then you don't focus on what you do have, your passion, your commitment to serve, your heart for public service. And I think that it's just important to believe in yourself, and also to not be afraid to encourage and uplift women, and tap your friends if you see potential in someone, which a lot of the times it takes someone to really, sometimes someone has to ask you, and sometimes you have to ask them multiple times, but whatever it takes. So believe in yourself and uplift, support other women, especially there's like I think a couple people on this Zoom call that are running for office. I'm sure that they're always looking for opportunities for people to get involved. So don't be afraid to reach out if you don't have campaign experience. It's always important to just give back and involved in your communities, and joining a campaign is always a great way to do that.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn. Now I'm going to pass it back to Oliver.
Thank you, Elena. You know, this is our second year doing this, and I can, you know, I always, like someone said, I leave inspired all the time. You know, we do what we do in the community because we care. You know, we genuinely care what happens, but more than anything, we want to empower people. And you know, one of my goals as president of this organization was to uplift women, give them, you know, positions of power, put them in positions of power too. Because, you know, someone that is very close, you know, the majority of my household is women. My mom, my grandma lives here still with us. And, you know, I see the struggle every day, you know, everything that they would tell me, you know, as they crossed over the border here to Mexico, you know, and it's things that stay with you. I myself am a big believer about telling a story. You know, those of you that know me, you know that means a lot to me. You know, in a world that is moving very quickly, we don't make the time to stop and hear people's stories anymore. We just see that person is doing this, that person is doing that, but what's the reason why they're doing it? A lot of times people, you know, forget that, you know, and that means a lot. But I think more than anything, for me, it's important to recognize the work that people are doing. There's so many things going on that sometimes, you know, we don't stop to say, you know what, good job. You know, you're doing amazing work. And that means a lot to someone. You never know the power of those few words, that thank you, that appreciation can go, especially, you know, women that are running for office. I myself have been a campaign manager, and I can tell you it is hard, right? My goal was always to elect as many women as possible to office, because I know that's the future. You know, my two sisters are watching, and I would want them to one day be able to look and say, you know what, our representatives look like us, our representatives talk like us, and that's my goal. You know, as an older brother, as someone that believes, you know, in the work that we're doing. But I think, again, I'm honored to be in the presence of such powerful women. You know, Melissa, te quiero dar las gracias. Yo sé que ahorita en México es ya más tarde que aquí. En verdad, de todo corazón, gracias. Gracias por estar con nosotros. Como te he dicho en muchas ocasiones, el trabajo que haces es grande. No es algo que... Yo sé que hay muchas cosas que están pasando ahorita en México, pero yo sé que tarde que temprano vamos a llegar a esa meta. Y yo estoy más que seguro que pronto veremos una mujer presidenta en México. And Sarah, you as well, thank you. And on Canada, it is late as well. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to making the time to be here with us. But again, I thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot. I know it means a lot to our members as well. Elena, Maria Jose, thank you for moderating this roundtable. Again, I couldn't do the work that I do without, you know, my team, which as I said, it's mostly women. It was one of my goals to make our cabinet mostly women, because again, I truly believe that if we are going to empower women, we need to set the example. And that's what I wanted to do. You know, set the example and let other organizations know if we're doing it, you can do it as well. You know, I want to do that. I want to be that supporter. And I think, like I tell a lot of people, a lot of men, right? It's like, don't just post about it. You know, keep doing it every single day. Lead by example. Let's keep empowering women, not just today, but every single day. And I hope that is what I'm doing. I hope that one day I can make my sisters, my mom, and my grandma proud to say, you know what, everything that we are doing now is for a better future for you. And the day that I have my own kids, I can tell them, you know what, everything we did was for you. Especially if I have daughters, it's like, this is the work that we left behind for you, you know, and that maybe it wasn't enough, but we at least tried, you know. So I am very proud of each and every one of you, and honored to really know each and every one of you. And I'll pass it over to Elena Maria Jose.
As closing remarks, I would just again like to thank every single one of you from making the time, I'm sure, out of your very busy schedules to discuss these topics, especially having people from different time zones like Sarah and Melissa. Y nomás quiero gracias para Melissa de México y Sara de Canadá para discutir estos temas con nosotros porque es muy importante para la generación mayor y no más gracias por ser para todo lo que haces y así. So again, thank you to everyone that took the time out of their day to discuss this with us, and hopefully I can be here for the third roundtable to host it. It was really fun, and thank you. So.
Yeah, thank you, Maria Jose. So what I wanted to say was also thank you. Thank you for coming and telling us your stories, and hopefully guides us and serves as a sign of hope for us to reach our dreams and goals. It does become very difficult being women, and especially being women of minorities, of colors, and it's difficult. But hearing that there's other women out there that are doing so much, I'm a shy person, and I like to see that though I'm shy, I can also probably do stuff that you guys do. I can reach it. I can be maybe the first, maybe not the first. Like, it's nice to see that someone up in front of me was able to do it and create a path. Muchas gracias por venir, Melissa. Sé que ya después de estar bien cansada, ya queriendo ir a dormir, pero gracias mucho. Yo misma también, mis padres son de México y yo sé que es difícil, especialmente siendo feminista, tratando de ser alguien que habla para todo lo que está pasando. Y es triste, es un país bien bonito, bien, muchos bellas cosas en México, pero espero que un día pueda ser bello como antes y poder, mujer, hombre, lo que sea, sentirse más a gustos ahí. Pero gracias por venir. Thank you, Sarah. You too. Thank you for coming. I hope you learned Spanish. And thank you for participating in something that's not even your country. It's United States. But I'm very proud to know that you agreed to work with us, and I hope to see you guys all in the next discussion. But thank you all for coming, and have a nice night. Yes, night. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.